So these are the parts. First thing I'd like to do is give credit to a good friend of mine, Horlicks. A lot of his builds where you get a nice little label, he actually leaves the label out. That means you as the viewer can watch the video at any stage and you know what issue we're on. So obviously I'm restarting this from part way through. So there's certain things I'm going to explain how I do things as we go. All of my screws I've placed in a screw pot holder. Well, it's a pillbox. I'm going to be changing this soon. Now there are 6 different types of screws. There are these ones which I believe are fixing hull plating. Now we've been collecting the hull plating over the course of weeks, so that's why we have a lot of screws. And we have these ones that tend to be more for framework. Now these brass ones, they don't explain the difference between the two, but they are slightly different, and you can feel that when you actually insert them. So I tried to sort of keep them a little bit separate. Where I know exactly what they are, I will keep them separate, and I know where to put them. So we have BF7, sorry, I do apologise. Be very careful, there are some small parts, they like to bag them up, lots of things in one piece, and they are clearly labelled normally. So this is BF7. It's very hard to see, but it is written just there. So that's a really strong metal piece. This is all for the framework. This is BF8, which you can see there, that's metal as well. And we've got hull plating BF13, and there we go, it's written just there. So the next part is a 2-hole rib connector, and there should be one of those. So now there are, my apologies, there's 4 of those. Now they're obviously easy to sort out. Quite often we use these straight away sometimes, but I'll still pop them in the pillbox holder, and then I know they're safe. Right, then we have a rib connector, and this is this there, and we will just pop that in a parts tray. We have a radial stiffening rib. My apologies, this is the rib connector. I do apologise, I've got that wrong. So that goes in its own separate container, and this is actually the radial stiffening rib. Then we have 4 fixing screws, and they are well, we've actually got 5, but we should have 4, so that's these. So we will pop that into a spare container. We will use these up before we fill them, before we fill the different pots, but they would normally be for the rib connectors, like there. You see there's 4 holes there, so I'll pop that with those. I think that's what they're going to be for. Then we've got 16 fixing screws. These are black. These are generally for these. So there are a bit of a collection already, and what tends to be happening is you get pieces of the ribs, and then you just collect them up, and then you don't do anything for them for ages, and then all of a sudden you just need to assemble all of them, which I think is a really nice way of doing this. And lastly we've got do you know, I've gone wrong again. These are actually the fixing screws, 16 of them. I mean, it doesn't matter, you can tell which ones are which. And they go into there. You see we've got lots of them, so when we come to doing the panels, we'll have an awful lot of work to do. Now they will go into things like these holes there. They'll go through the ribs. You see you've got some larger holes there, so if that went onto this one, that would go in like that. And then lastly we've got some LED lights and some wiring, and I'll leave this done up so that way if we don't use it, it'll remain tidy. So what I've been doing on my other videos is showing one frame at a time. However, I found that these are actually really detailed, and that actually to do it one frame at a time would be quite confusing. So I've shown you the entire stage, and then what we'll do is we'll just go through it. So we begin by fitting the rib connector over the end of the outer rib that you fitted in stage 36. So this is the rib connector, if I can just get the pot open, and they're the screws. So we just pop that over, and as you can see there's 2 holes in there, and there's 4 holes in there. 2 of them will go over there, and the next one that comes in will connect into those 2 holes. So what we then want to do is take 2 fixing screws. Now this is a good opportunity to tell you about the different brass screws. I'm just going to pop this screw in first, and that goes in just like that. Now the actual screw, it doesn't screw to this bit. There's actually, the hole is slightly bigger, so you won't actually start to feel any tightness until it actually connects with the other rib connector there, or the other side of the rib connector. And usually if you just put one in, it's quite loose. It's not till you get this second one in that it feels a lot stiffer. And what I should actually have done, I did mention about the different brass screws. Perhaps what I should have done was label them as I discover what they are, because obviously I know these are rib connector screws. Right, there we go. Now it does feel a little bit loose, it always does, but it's not till you get the other side in that it starts to feel a lot stiffer. So the next stage then, and we want to slide the end of the rib into the connector, and that will be this one. And what we need to do is look ahead, and we can see that it goes this way round, because then this hole is going to line up there. If we put it, in fact actually there's a little notch on it as well, so that helps, and there isn't a notch on this side. No notch. So if we popped it in this way, but also you can see there's no screw holes as well, so you really can't go wrong. And put them the actual square bit downwards, because obviously that needs to connect to the framework. So then what we'll do is we will pop another 2 screws in. Now I don't suspect for 1 second it matters which way round these screws go in. You can screw them in from the left to the right, or the right to the left. However, I always screw mine this way, so that as you look around the frame they will all look the same. It won't be seen on the finished model, because obviously there's going to be plating going over the top, but it just satisfies me. So we'll just get this last one in. I probably could have been using a slightly smaller screw head. I'm using the JO head here. Probably should have been using the J00, but it's working. I'm not stripping the head off the screw, so I'm not going to change midway through. So there we go. Just double check they're all tight. This is metal screws going into metal, so you want to get them nice and tight. It's the plastic ones that you don't want to over tighten. Oops. There we go, that's it. So the next stage, so I was trying to just grab a couple of heads without you noticing, but it kind of took me a little bit longer to get them. So we want to get frame BF07. Remember that it's all written on the bottom. So there we go. And we want to align the frame with the assembly as shown. And the way that it shows it is that it's slanting, it's getting thinner as it goes in towards the middle. So that's going to go on like so. And I've actually missed a stage. what we wanted to be doing is getting one black screw. We just need to finish off that rib connector where this hole has gone in there. We just want to pop a screw in there. And suddenly the whole thing's got a lot tighter. So now we want this this rib connector that goes onto there like so. And see, that's 6 stages we've just completed there. So screw the remaining hole on the flange of the rib. So we want to screw another black screw through there. And I have switched to a JOO, as you probably guessed. Okay, so be careful of this because it's at the moment it's only attached with the one screw, so it is a little bit loose. So if you caught that, you could bend it, or worse still, snap it. So turn the whole assembly over, screw a 2-hole connector across the corner joint between frames BF7 BF5. So that's BF7, so this one's BF5. So we want a screw connector there. So that will be the screw connector that we got this week, and I can't remember which part I put them in. There we are. Unless that's one that we got from a previous issue. Did we get one this week? Sometimes they give us just enough for the issue, and other times maybe I did get one and do you know, I can't remember now. Obviously by the time you're watching this, I'll have played it back on the video and I'll see just how wrong I was. So I'm a little bit confused by this now, because we've been putting the 2-hole connectors on this side. So let me just double check the instructions. It's definitely telling us to put it there. Okay, so normally the connectors have been placed in on this side, as you can see. But all of a sudden it's telling us to put it onto this side. I will follow the instructions. There might be a logical reason why. Sometimes they tell you to do odd things and you don't actually discover why until a later issue. So this is also making it a little bit more awkward to assemble, because I've got less room to maneuver. So I'm just going to pop that in just enough to grip. I don't want to tighten that too much because I won't be able to move that connector. So there we go, that's gone in fine. That's nice and tight. And the second one, or the first one, sorry, that's gone in fine. Okay, so now screw a 2-hole connector to the corner of the frame BF6 with one screw. So there's BF6. So that's going to be about there. Oh, struggling to get these out. I just have to tip them out. There we go. Sometimes it's easier to tip them all out and put one back. So we're going to need 2 screws in total. There's one. What I'm doing, I'm screwing the screw through first, and then it's going to be easier to hold, because then we can just hold the 2-hole connector. We'll just try a minute. Oh, do you know, actually I might get the, there we are, I'll get tweezers out. No, I'm really struggling here. Now I don't have particularly large hands or fat fingers, and I'm struggling, so sometimes the screw holes aren't quite drilled out properly. Sometimes I'm just screwing this screw in at the wrong angle, which I think actually might have happened then. So I'm not going to do that as tight as I can. It is tight though. I want to hold that, but I don't want to make it final. There is slight grooves on the frame, so it is guiding. It's guiding it where it wants it. Right, and then we screw a 2-hole connector to the side of frame BF7, and that's going to be there. So and again, this one I'm not going to do too tight, because I can't see any holes to guide, any lines or grooves to guide it, so we won't know if it's fitted in exactly the right angle until we fit the next frame piece, which is coming next, and that's going to go in like so, and then we'll fix that with 2 more black screws. So the black screws are always used to fit the framework together. The brass ones are always used to connect the brib connectors. So we'll just bring that up. Doesn't matter which way round these go. That's that one in. That one doesn't seem to be finding a hole. There we go. That's better. That's going in. So now we'll go back and we'll screw the first 2 screws that we put in as tight as we can, because we now know they're in the correct position, and then we'll just check the second screw. See, that one wasn't in tight, so there we go. Screw the connector, turn the whole assembly back over, screw a 2-hole connector across the corner of frames BF8 and BF6. So that's 6 and that's 8, so that's going to go there. So that's all of our 2-hole connectors used up. Sometimes I worry because we get a big collection of the connectors. I can remember one issue that we did, and I spent ages looking for them, and I was going, well, they didn't give us enough with the magazine. I think we needed like 4 of them, but they only gave us the 1, just like this issue, and we spent ages looking for them, and I'd actually not put them back in the pillbox. I think, oh, I'd put them in a different section of the pillbox. Once I found them, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember now. So it is important to establish a hiding place for all your spare parts. We get some part works where we get like a couple of, you know, you don't often keep it part for the next week, but this one there's loads. But, you know, I'm just going to see if that 000 works better. I think it will. I don't like changing my screwdriver heads midway through, but my 2 favourite bits are the J00, which is quite a wide one and it grips. But sometimes I like the J000 because it goes into the screw much deeper, and sometimes that's more beneficial. Right, so that is the first stage, assembling the bottom frames complete. So now what I need to do is get my glue out, and might even use my new magnifying glass, and we're going to be detailing the hull panels. So this stage is a very good example of how this magazine works and why we need to store our parts. Remaining parts from issue 37, what we're going to do is we're going to put those to one side, and we're going to get the parts from issue 36, and this is what we're going to be working on this week. So the first thing it asks us to do is to take these long strips. Now I always say dry fit, and this really does come into play here. So what we're going to do, we're going to be attaching the strips down the front here. Now there is only one way that these go in, and that's this way, and you've got this little angled bit, and that goes at the front. If you try to fit it in the wrong way round, it's three little notches there. You see it's not going to go in. In fact, it doesn't actually fit. If you try to put it in on the wrong side, on the opposite side, not only does it not fit, but it actually looks really weird. Actually it goes in quite nicely, but it just looks strange. So what we do is we just dry fit that. That's a really nice fit. I like that. And I'll put that on this side because that is the side it's going to go on, and then we'll just dry fit this one. You see there's a little bit of weathering going on there, but we may end up repainting all of this anyway. So there we go, that's gone on fine. So ordinary plastic cements work fine on this. Unfortunately with this one, I normally use a brush on one, but I can't seem to locate it at the moment. I have lost my little tube, so I'm just going to be very careful. Don't work downwards on the glue because the gravity pushes the glue out, so try to work sideways or upwards. And we just want to put a little bit on there, not too much, and if you feel there's too much, which I actually do, we just want to give that a little bit of a rub with something. So bear with me. So I just gave that a slight rub. We only want a little bit. You can see it's shiny, but you don't want to see a build up of it. And then what we'll do, we should have quite a lot of working time with this. If I had my brush on cement, I would actually apply it to both sides. And the way that this actually works, plastic cement or plastic glue, is it actually slightly melts the plastic, and then everything it comes into contact with. So if you placed it on there, if my hands were the plastic, it would slightly melt the surfaces, and then as you put them together, the top layer kind of mixes because it's a slight liquid, or more liquidy, and then as it dries, because it's kind of changed the surface from that to that, so you can see there as it sets, that's not going to come apart. And that's the way that cement works. This is why plastic cement doesn't work on paper or metal, because it can't melt that surface. So we'll just pop this on. Remember, we're not working downwards on the glue. Whoops. I'm trying to run the glue into the natural channel that's there, but I actually slipped, but I haven't got any on. If I was to slip and get glue all over the place, it would be a bit of a well, it's not the end of the world, but it would be a little bit of a disaster, because obviously, as I've just explained, it tries to melt anything it comes in contact with, and that's exactly what it will do. So what you will usually find is that the actual bond on this, once it's dried, will be as strong as the plastic. If anybody's seen my don't like that. If anybody's seen any of my 3D printing videos, you'll see I use a 3D pen, and although I'm adding plastic to the surfaces, that's not even working. Look, that's unusual. I'll just try that again. Remember, I'm not pointing the glue downwards. It might not just, if it's slightly unlevel, it's going to need a little bit more just to sort of get in there. There we go. I must admit, this Citadel glue, I mean, I got this free with a magazine subscription, but I must admit that although it's quite expensive, you have to admit it's one of the best products out there. Although the glue that I use, the liquid stuff, I cannot find one person who's used it that won't agree it's the best. There we go, and that's that bit done. So we'll obviously, this will be a lot stronger. Let's see how strong this is. See, that's bonded quite well. I can pull that off because I've not given it enough time to set. Ideally you want to leave it overnight, but you can work with it quite quickly. So the next we want to get this piece, and this is going to go in behind this weathered area. Now on the magazine, no, it wants to go in front, sorry. On the magazine they have it this orientation, and you can see there's 2 notches on there, so we'll just do a dry fit, and that's gone in perfect. So we look at the points of contact, 2 points there, and it looks like all of this outside edge is going to have contact, so I'm going to have to be a bit careful. I'll put a bit of glue on here because I'm right-handed, so I apply the glue in my right hand, but then I want to place the piece onto the ship with my right hand because I got more control, which means I have to switch hands, which is where it becomes a little bit tricky. Really I shouldn't have done that over the model, because if I'd have dropped it, it would have dropped straight onto the model, and that's gone straight in, no problems. That's more by luck than anything. My judgment seems to be quite good today. I'm on the ball, as they would say. So next we want to this is all we've got left, of 3 pieces on sprues. Now you can either use a sprue cutter to remove these. I have explained how to use one in my other videos, but because I've not explained it on this series of videos, we'll do it again. Now I like to, they'll tell you to cut really close. I personally like to just cut a little bit too far. I'll show you in a second. This is my own personal preference. You can do it your own way, but you'll see I've deliberately left 2 notches on the side. And then what I will do, I will come in with my trimmer, and trimming away from the piece, I'll just trim that a little bit shorter. And as you can see, I can't get in totally flush, and I'll just trim that a little bit shorter, so there's still a little bit left over. I'm struggling with this. And when you cut, never cut straight down, always cut at an angle. I actually learnt this when I was at catering college, and what it is if you push straight, this is actually a surgical blade, if you push straight down, you can see from the line on my finger, do not do this at home, but this is just a demonstration, but where I push down, you can see that has tried, but because the action doesn't work like that. Now if I was to get a piece of paper just to show you how sharp it really is, look at that, with no effort at all, that's sliced through there. Bit of plastic, so that you know, I'm not saying it's a blunt blade, but obviously don't try that at home, please. I am allegedly a trained professional. So what we're going to do with this last bit, we're just going to give this a very gentle file, just filing away from the handle. These work best in one direction. What you don't want to do doing is, and this is why we want to just trim it just to get in closer, and then we'll just keep filing that until we're flush. The only drawback I find with these sprues, because they've been weathered, if you, whoops, okay, I may have to do a camera cut later, because I've just dropped a piece and it may have landed on me, it may have landed on the floor. So I'll carry on with the other piece, I'll do a cut, I'll find the piece, and then we'll come back to it. So if you overfile on this and there's some weathering, you will actually remove the weathering. So there we go. Okay, so unfortunately that bit bounced off. This is what happens if I make comments like things are going very well. They do tend, I always get told off, but every time I say that something happens. So what I'll do is I'll have to get another issue, or I'll have to find it. But they're actually going to go into there, so I don't think it's going to be a major problem. So we'll pop the first one in, and then obviously at some point in the future I will pop the second one in. So there, I just broke my rule. I pointed my glue downwards and I got a little bit too much in there, so I'll just take a little bit out. Don't ever rub with your finger because you're going to spread glue everywhere. So there we go. And I've gone for this one because this one is the most weathered. So because there's something on the surface, it's actually going to be the most difficult one to stick. You see, this one's not been weathered as much, so that will stick with these. So if this one works with this glue, this one definitely will, and that's actually perfect. So that's that part done. So the last thing we have is we have one more piece on the sprue. So we'll get our trimmers, and same as before, I'm going to cut that a little bit too long. You see there's little bits on the end. Then I'm going to trim with my knife, moving at an angle and away from me. There we go. And then we'll just finish it off with the file, making sure I hold it better so it doesn't fly off. You can always trim that further if you want. I know a lot of people that don't use files at all. There we go. There we go. Very happy with that. Right, so this is going to go on to this piece there, and we've got the larger bit goes at the top and the smaller bit at the bottom, and I can see also there's a little tab on there, so that goes there. Let's just try that the wrong way round. We'll see what happens. You know me, I like to try and do it wrong, and that will go, but it doesn't feel comfortable. So what I'm going to do with this one, you notice I've been gluing onto the target because this is a small part. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to glue onto this because it's very small. So we'll just get, I'm a bit worried, I don't normally use this mat for gluing. This is my clean build mat. Okay, and I can see I've got glue on both of those. I've got another cutting mat which I use for painting and gluing and making, so I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to get this one messed up. So there we go, that is the issue complete. So if we just bring in the other part that we've done, so we've put this piece on the end and we've put this detailing down here, which won't be fully dry yet, but I'm just giving this a little tug. I'm not pulling it hard, I'm just giving it a gentle tug. I just want to know if that glue is taken. If I pulled that off now, that would come off, but I'm going to leave it overnight, and by the morning that should be rock solid. Okay guys, so that's it, and I will see you next week for issue 38.